My name is Steve Gilman, and for decades I've been helping brands engage with their audiences. On this podcast, we'll connect the dots in the fast-paced world of branding by talking with entrepreneurs, leaders, and marketers on the front lines of telling brand stories. In this episode of Brand Story, I talk with thought leader Jay Harrington, who is president of Harrington Communications, about building relationships through LinkedIn, storytelling, and the importance of adopting an abundance mindset. Welcome to the Brand Story podcast. Our guest today is Jay Harrington. Jay is a lawyer who worked at big law firms and built a successful firm of his own. For the last decade, he's become one of the country's top coaches, trainers, and consultants for the legal industry. He's also the author of 4 books, co-hosts the Thought Leadership Project podcast, and writes monthly columns for top legal publications such as Law.com and Attorney at Work. And Jay's also, on top of all that, the president of Harrington Communications, his own communications firm. And Jay, hi. Thanks for being on the Brand Story podcast today.
Steve, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah, your career is fascinating. And, you and I have talked, and I follow you on LinkedIn. And honestly, I think your story is really inspiring for people that are in huge organizations or in cities. And, you've made some lifestyle choices that I think are really interesting that we'll talk about a bit. I was reading your book, The Productivity Pivot, and you describe when you left big law and then you started your own small firm, and it was right in the middle of the financial crisis. And I think that sudden hustle really taught you some things. You learned a lot. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I know sometimes it seems crazy looking back to think, you go from a relatively stable and safe environment of a big law firm, and that's the time you make a jump to start a small law firm of your own, really at the time with no clients of my own to speak of. But there was the advantage that we had, at least that I had, was that the practice area that I specialized in was corporate restructuring. So, that was a time period, as we all remember, that, the bankruptcy wave was hitting, companies were struggling. So I figured if I was ever going to go out on my own, that was the moment. That said, and it all turned out very well. It was scary in many respects because, like I said, I didn't really have clients. All of a sudden I had an office space, I had employees, payroll to meet, all of those things, which I'd never had to deal with before. And we got our firm up and running in about a 30-day period of time. So it was fast.
That is fast.
Yeah, because we kind of knew, we were based in Detroit, and in addition to the financial crisis, of course, there was the crisis happening within the automotive industry, which we were in the middle of. So we knew that Chrysler was on the cusp of bankruptcy and GM was shortly to follow. And so I think we opened our doors maybe 3 days after the Chrysler filing, and we were off and running. So that helped. I mean, there was massive demand, and we figured a bit more supply in the marketplace could help service that demand, and it all turned out pretty well at the end. But yeah, it was a bit harrowing, but we figured it out as we went.
Yeah, that's a big change from working at a big corporate firm and then all of a sudden being on your own. Had you ever been an entrepreneur before? Because all of a sudden you're thrust into this totally different world. No.
I mean, I think I went right from undergrad to law school to a big law firm. So I had the typical jobs you have growing up during the summer months, but nothing approaching entrepreneurship. So the need to get up to speed pretty quick. There is something to be said about, putting yourself, I think there's the old, metaphor, analogy about burning the boats, so to speak, where you kind of, don't leave yourself any option but to push forward and succeed. And that definitely fueled us. And I keep saying us, speaking in a plural sense. I had a partner at the time who I started the firm with, who also left the same big law firm I did. So we hustled quite a bit, and we were able to, make it all work. But it is very different, and that's the thing I really enjoyed, though, and I think I missed. What I look back on now and realize is that you can be very entrepreneurial within a big organization, especially like a law firm where it's a unique industry. Well, it's like any service industry, but where the individual professionals are both responsible for bringing in the business and oftentimes servicing the business. So you have to figure that out, and you can be very entrepreneurial within an organization like that. But the culture, when I started practicing law, which was back in 2001, the culture at the very big firm that I worked at was um, just keep your head down, do good work, and things like becoming a partner in the firm will take care of itself because they were institutional clients, that kind of thing. That mindset has definitely changed, and it's bad advice
Yeah.
for anyone who's just starting off in any
It
career.
is bad advice.
But yeah, so that in that sense, I was not ready for entrepreneurship, but I don't know who really is in a sense. You kind of have to figure it out.
So how did that lead from, you started your own small firm, you had the bravery to just take the leap, and I'm glad it was working for you. What started that from there to the transition to being a communicator for lawyers and trying to help people figure this thing that you had figured out?
So a couple things. I mean, one was that when I kind of part of it was just opportunistic in the sense of I kind of saw the end coming to the wave of work that we had been servicing, and it was a good run, but it was very stressful in many respects. So I, was kind of thinking about what the next phase is. I have a tendency to kind of, bounce from thing to thing sometimes, and always looking at what the next new opportunity is. And at that time, my wife Heather she had already started what is our current business right now, and she's a graphic designer by trade. But
Oh, that's cool.
when we left Chicago back in the mid 2000s, when we moved back to the Detroit area, rather than getting a job, she kind of started her own small, just freelancing, doing design work, which led to, some little bit larger clients. She was able to hire some other people, the typical story of how I think a lot of creative agencies start. At that point, and at the time we were running our law firm in the same building that she was running her marketing agency. So I was kind of immersed in both worlds. Your spouse is running a business, and it's in the same building, and so I definitely saw an opportunity to apply some of the skills I had learned as a practicing lawyer and someone who ran a small law firm to the legal world, which is always behind the curve in terms of things like marketing, business development, and so after about 4 years of the law firm, I decided to make the jump over there, and part of it was driven by a desire for a different lifestyle. Practice of law is very demanding, and a lot of long hours. Not that there aren't in other fields. And one thing I always tell people is, I don't necessarily work a fewer hours. I mean, I probably work somewhat fewer hours, but there's, the stress level is a little different, right? The consequences of the work aren't quite what they are in the work I do now, especially since, there's not like the malpractice risk hanging over you with everything you do, and there's also not someone on the other side of every piece of work product I create who's looking to poke holes in it.
Yeah.
Where there is in an adversarial environment like litigation or
Yeah.
something like that. So those stresses weigh on you over time. So I was looking for a different lifestyle, and we were also at the time thinking about moving the marketing agency once I joined it from a bricks and mortar operation to a virtual operating model. In part because we wanted to move to somewhere that we desired to live, and that wasn't going to necessarily allow for us to be in a physical environment because our employees weren't necessarily going to move with us. So in any event, I think to answer your question directly, I think it was twofold. One was I saw an opportunity, a business opportunity, and secondly, I saw an opportunity to kind of design a different lifestyle, one that we were more attracted to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, that's a big jump from, you're trained to be a lawyer, you were a lawyer at a big law firm and the small one, and then just to have the inspiration to become a communicator and thought leader for lawyers, I think is really just a fascinating story. And it being somewhat lifestyle oriented, I really relate to, because we were in the Washington, D.C. market for years and with big clients up there. And, one of my last 50 to an hour long commutes to go 4 miles, I decided, nope, not doing this anymore. And I moved our entire company to the Shenandoah Valley. So you all are in some place kind of in relation to Chicago like that now, right?
Yeah, so we are in northern Michigan, in a town called Traverse City. Small town. I think it's 15,000 or 16,000 full-time residents. Although in these months, in the summer months, it can swell to, two, three, 400,000 at a time because people flock here. But yeah, it's one of those areas that's, um, it's right on Lake Michigan. Lot of natural surroundings. Enables the lifestyle, active lifestyle that we like. We like to downhill ski in the winter, be on the water in the summer, and it offers that opportunity. And, it also has a great entrepreneurial vibe here, which is nice. Although, we don't have a client within probably 200 miles of us, so we don't, which is kind of nice because I never have to think about marketing or doing business with anyone up here,
Right. You're not
right?
going to run into them at the coffee shop and
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I never wear that hat up here, which is kind of nice, so you can kind of separate work from life to a greater extent, and that's kind of what we were looking for. So yeah, it's been a good move. And the surprise, the thing that surprised me, because of course when you make a move like that, and you may have had the same experience, Steve, which is you fear that certain clients might find out and wonder what's going on and
they
leave and
won't
all of
like it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we didn't know exactly what would happen, but we thought it was a risk worth taking. It turns out it wasn't a risk at all. No one cared for the most part. One of the clients that I really feared losing, or I thought it wouldn't have been a huge impact, but at least that I thought it was likely to maybe leave because the company he ran, he liked to meet face to face all the time and all that. Well, it turns out about 6 months after we moved, I got a call from him and he wanted to have a conversation. And I thought, oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah. Right.
And what he called to tell me was that he was actually moving to Traverse City. So of all
That's great.
things,
Yeah. I think we were a little ahead on the remote working curve that I think has become really acceptable and really part of life now. But
yeah,
I had the same thing with clients. We were working with the U.S. Postal Service, and they really like to meet face to face, very traditional, very buttoned up. And when they found out we were 2.5 hours away in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley, their response was completely not what I expected. I expected to have to talk about it a lot and be like, I'll just, we'll be up here anytime you need us. They were like, can we come down there for meetings?
yep,
They just wanted to get the heck out of the city.
yep,
So
yep,
it worked great for us. We kept clients there. We had clients in Richmond, Virginia, and we're sort of in between two cities. So, and the lifestyle is just totally different. And I think, the move you made getting away from that type of law into helping people communicate, and I can understand like the stress levels, even if you work the same amount of hours, it's a different form of stakes. Now you're helping people where in law you're helping people too, but it's filled with conflict. There's a lot of, it's difficult as
yeah.
far as the situations that you're in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in the type of work I did, it was always a crisis. It was always a fire drill, and it was always a consequential one, right? There's always a lot of money at stake, and so people, it came with the commensurate level of stress that comes with that sort of scenario. So yeah, the ability now to work in a different environment where, and we've also worked really hard because I think you still get that a lot in creative services where you build an agency and one of your core values is we provide excellent client service, but then you make your clients accustomed to you jumping all the time and
Yeah.
training them to like not think ahead and plan and so we found there was a period of time where it was like we were still dealing with hot requests all the time and clients thinking nothing of being like, oh, we forgot we have an ad due tomorrow, can you get that done for us? And it wasn't always a heavy lift, but that became more and more frequent, and so as a result of just enough of that kind of pain and same problem over and over. We've definitely tried, and I think succeeded over time to get in a position where we're much more in a leadership role in those relationships, where it's like, all right, here's the plan for the month, and here's how we're going to execute it, and so it's much more structured. So that's definitely helped on I guess, lifestyle front as well, in terms of just having a more structured approach to work, as opposed to training clients that you can just handle whatever they throw at you, regardless of, how unreasonable.
Yeah, and you train them through your own behavior by delivering really quickly. And then once you start doing it, then they want it all the time. And you just can't do that for all clients. So
No,
that
you can't.
setting those reasonable expectations and having those conversations, it's something I think everyone that I know that works in, creative consulting or creative businesses, they all run into that, whether they're designers or producers or
Yeah.
cinematographers, everyone runs into it. So what do you wish, that kind of leads into the next question. What do you wish that marketers or people on the business side that you work with knew about storytelling?
Well, I think it's that people people make decisions as a result of emotions, not necessarily intellect or logic. So, they and stories are what evoke emotion. And so I think that the ability to tell an interesting story about yourself, about your business, about your background is what allows you to create that positive association with you and your ideas and the solutions you provide, in a way that just mere, talking about characteristics and qualities and services just can't accomplish. And so I think that that's really important. And for just to give the example from our world or our domain, with providing services to lawyers and law firms, when it's you, the lawyer or the professional who is actually doing work for clients and also responsible for developing that business, the ability to tell effective stories that people resonate with, is what is really the foundation, I think, of marketing and business development in those fields. And the ability to tell effective stories really results from paying attention to your day-to-day work and lived experience, right? It's those, when I coach or train people on, like, creating content for LinkedIn, for example, it's all about paying attention. Content creation is never an issue that relates to, the notion of writer's block, right? It's always idea block. Like, it's not not knowing how to write, it's having ideas to write about. And when you pay attention to, questions that clients ask you, or struggles you've had in the past where you've learned lessons from that experience, or, just whatever things that you learned coaching your daughter's soccer game this past weekend, that's the kind of thing that resonates and builds an audience and allows you to have a platform that people pay attention to. So I think that notion that it's not about how much but it's your ability to connect on an emotional level with an audience, and that's done through storytelling, that really, helps you build your brand, or create connections with people through your content that you can't do any other way.
Yeah, and I think I've worked with a lot of physician leaders and CEOs and CMOs, and a lot of people who aren't marketers or aren't storytellers. They want to sell, or they want to give you a bunch of proof points, or they want you to talk about benefits. But people do buy emotionally, then defend it logically. They don't buy logically and defend it emotionally usually. So emotion plays a big part. And one of the things I've seen you talk about on LinkedIn, because I see, you see people on LinkedIn that are always selling, and then you see people on LinkedIn that are just being human and telling stories that are engaging people. And, I think that's probably a muscle that a lot of people don't have, or they haven't developed yet. So, if you've been in a culture or a big business where you're just supposed to sell and just supposed to talk about the benefit you bring, you don't think about, I'm just going to be a person and tell stories that'll engage others. But you talk a little bit about having an abundance mindset on LinkedIn. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I found that really fascinating.
Yeah. So this is the notion that, being generous on a platform like LinkedIn, and by being generous, I mean sharing what you know, being very open and honest, and sharing your ideas in a way that are helpful to people. That that allows people to be attracted to you and want to follow what you have to say. Commenting on and supporting other people's posts and their efforts to gain an audience on the platform. when seeing that someone is looking for a job, trying to look out for that person, just generally coming to the platform with a mindset that I wrote a post a couple weeks back, and if you would come to LinkedIn and say, instead of who can help me here, who can I help here, you're going to find a much greater level of success because the law of or the rule of reciprocation does kick in. So if you can give as much as possible without any expectation of reciprocity from those you're trying to be helpful to, the universe sort of rewards your abundance. And I can't tell you why that is exactly. I can't tell you the exact like science behind it all, but I've seen it work over and over. And, we also see the counterexample of that, which is, sort of a scarcity mindset where someone's always pitching, someone is always holding back, someone is always, thinking that whatever attention someone else is getting, it's robbing them
Right.
of their opportunity for attention. All of these things. And
Great way to live.
yeah, exactly. And it's just the way it is. So I think if you can have that abundance mindset and be and with that abundance mindset comes patience too, right? I mean, we're always in a hurry. We think that, and this is always frustrating with clients, right? Where they think, oh, marketing, everything should be a big splash that has an instant impact. And that's just not the way it works, especially in businesses like legal services where, to go from the point at which a prospective client becomes aware of you to the point at which they're going to hire you involves a whole lot of trust building. And you need to have patience that your abundance and generosity over time will be rewarded, because if you come with that scarcity mindset, you're going to turn people off.
I couldn't agree more. Companies that we work with, we've been their agency for 10 plus years because we just show up every day trying to help. Like, we're not trying to sell. We're not trying to get them to do something. We're actually just trying to help. And I think that abundance mindset, I think, applies to life. It applies to social media. And I see people respond to that on social media over and over again, especially on LinkedIn, because when you cheer someone else on, it doesn't cost you a thing. It isn't taking away from your accolades. It isn't taking away from your business. There's a big enough pie for all of us out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's the way it is. Just go on and observe. I always tell my clients that who are like, I can't figure this LinkedIn thing out. It's just pay attention. And you'll notice the patterns, you'll spot the connections, and you'll be able to witness like what is working on the platform. And of course, there's a difference. There are people who are pitch all the time and seem to get a lot of engagement on their posts and whatnot. But I wonder whether they're actually that attention is translating into what we all want, which is business. I think they're two different things. Whereas certainly my approach, once in a while, I think Gary Vaynerchuk uses the term jab, 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 right hook. Like, every once in a while you can throw a right hook, but you want to build up the goodwill such that that right hook actually lands with people. And that's by, mostly giving value over time. And, I know that I almost never, if I have a new book coming out or something, there'll be some promotion related to that. But, I post every day on LinkedIn, sometimes twice. It can be a bit obnoxious, I'm sure, for some people.
No, actually, I love it.
Yeah, but it's almost never, at least I try never to be overtly promotional with any of the content. And yet, despite that, my clients are smart enough to figure out like, well, if, I seem to like what this guy has to say, I at least want to maybe, I'm provoked enough to have a conversation, understand what he does to help people like me. And that's always the starting point for new business.
I think it's a starting point for, the way that you do it. And I am one of your audience members on LinkedIn, really enjoy what you do there. And I think a lot of people could learn from what you do, honestly. So if you're not following Jay, please follow Jay because his content is amazing. So one of the things that I think is true about, you're putting stuff out there, you're jab, jab, jab. Maybe occasionally you ask for the business, but it's which business you get too. So you don't, it's not a good fit with everyone. So that using that abundance philosophy or using that attraction philosophy means you're probably going to end up connecting more with people that are like-minded or someone that's a good fit. Because just like any relationship, if you get into a dysfunctional business relationship, it's zero fun for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great point, Steve. And, I don't know if I've totally been conscious about or intentional about that, but I do think that, when it comes to the type of things that I write, I try to be very genuine and authentic about what I think works. Like for clients, so I talk about things like, the importance of creating thought leadership content and how from a marketing standpoint, that's a long game
Yeah.
that can be very fruitful, but it's not an overnight, new business strategy for people. So yeah, I mean, I think just people, I don't write about things that are more like quick fixes. So anyone who's looking for that quick fix I might turn them off, and that's okay. I'd rather turn them off than have them, start a relationship with someone who I can't really help, or even have a conversation with them. So yeah, the ability to, be genuine about what you do and what you do best, and attract an audience of like-minded people. You don't. I always say too, you don't need a big I'd much rather have an audience that is very interested in what I have to say and is bought into the notion of my philosophy than like, a big disparate audience of people who just, it's just mere size as opposed to the quality of the composition of the audience. So yeah, the ability to allow people to sort of opt out from your message, by being genuine and consistent, I think is a key component of all of this.
Do you get a lot of interaction or followers that aren't from the legal realm? I know you specialize in helping law firms and helping lawyers that are in solo practices tell their story or learn how to tell their story. So do you get interaction from others a lot of the time? Because I follow you. I'm not a lawyer. I own a marketing agency and a brand consultant. But as soon as I saw your content, I was attracted to it, and it's not even intended for me.
Right, right. Well, yeah, that's interesting. And I do quite a bit, and probably for the same reason. I mean, nothing I'm saying is unique to the legal industry for the most part. I mean, I shouldn't say nothing, but much of it, the core principles, the foundational principles, are transferable to any business, especially in the service industry. And so, yeah, people can recognize that, if it works in the legal industry, it's going to work in any service business. So, and it, one of the consequences of that is, yeah, while we have a very defined niche of serving the legal industry, we oftentimes get inquiries from and do work for other professional services who kind of look to the legal industry. Legal industry among the service industries is a bit unique because it's probably the best, at least things like management consulting or accounting. It has a trade association for legal marketing professionals that's pretty robust and large, and so I know a lot of other adjacent industries look to the legal industry as like, the kind of the standard of having robust in-house legal marketing departments, that kind of thing. So they look for agencies that serve that industry, and they think, well, if you can help sophisticated law firms, you can help our economic consulting firm,
Yeah,
for
right.
example.
That makes a lot of sense because the industry you serve is not simple, and also it's not without demanding clients.
Right, but it's fundamentally the same business model as any other sophisticated service, and that gets to an important point. Because this is something I deal with my clients all the time, which is the notion of having a niche for your business or a narrow focus to who you serve. And I'll tell my clients, look, having a niche can make you very attractive to the one market segment you're communicating to, but it doesn't foreclose you from having opportunities to serve anyone else, because clients are smart. They can figure out the same way that an economic consulting firm can figure out we can help them with their marketing. Other adjacent industries to the one that a lawyer might focus on can figure out that same equation. So it's about putting a stake in the ground and really trying to be super hyper relevant to a market segment, but doesn't mean you can't serve others.
Yeah, it doesn't disqualify. I mean, we've done decades of healthcare marketing and financial marketing And it's kind of the same thing. We have other adjacent and other clients that aren't in those industries, but they look at the industries that we've specialized in and go, wow, if you can do that, you can help me. Because those are not, both are fairly highly regulated, both have a lot of high stakes communication that goes on. So it's kind of the same thing, and I really respect the work you do with law firms because it is very complex. So there's something you have talked about on LinkedIn about writing style, and I think would have a lot of benefit to people listening. You talk a little bit about writing fluency and writing in a conversational style, and I think you do that about as well as anyone I've seen. So how do you help people? What do you talk to people about to help them get there?
Yeah, well, I mean, it starts with really understanding who your audience is. And so some of your writing is context dependent or audience dependent. For the most part, if we're talking about something like writing, creating thought leadership content, creating posts on LinkedIn, people, more than anything else, people want you to keep it simple and write in a conversational style. We're talking about businesses where the individual is the business from all respects. At least that's how the client perceives it, right? There's an old saying in the legal industry, and I think it's probably it may not be unique to the legal industry, but clients hire the lawyer, not the law firm. So you don't want to come across as just a cog in the institution of the big law firm, but rather an individual who has a personality and a story to tell. So being able to write in a conversational style that is serving the needs and the desires of your audience is really important. So that involves one, storytelling, of course. People connect with stories. It's the ancient form of communication where we've passed down information and recorded history and all of that. And it's the way that lessons are distilled and taught to other people. Also, one of the things that lawyers have a really hard time, in particular, and I think many people do across industries, is putting their face and their identity on their writing. So, meaning writing in the first person as opposed to sort of hiding behind the mask of third person writing.
Yeah, and also being a real person, being a little bit vulnerable.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yes. A vulnerability, right. People don't expect you to be, nor do they want you to be perfect. And if you're coming across as, without fault on through the content you're creating on a platform like LinkedIn, it's just not going to resonate with people. So the ability to talk about things you've struggled with, and then importantly, the ability to take those lessons learned and share them with other people in a way that might help them from your experience is really powerful, and I think connects you with other people. And so, yeah, there's lots of elements to writing more effectively. I mean, writing in a simple, fashion, not making the mistake that people will think you're smarter for using grandiose terms and as I wrote about today in a post, $10 words.
Don't write to impress.
Yeah, exactly. It's not impressive. Frankly, it turns people off. And getting to the point, right? Being concise. And that's one of the things that for me, I like most about LinkedIn, because writing is a practice like any other and requires practice. And writing in a constrained environment like LinkedIn, where you only have 1,300 characters in a post to get your point across, which works out to about 200 words, that's great practice. And that will have a spillover effect, a positive spillover effect to all of your communication. Ever since I started, writing daily posts on LinkedIn, the books I've written have gotten better, I think. My emails get better.
Kind of tightens up everything.
It does. It does. Everything, my speeches have gotten better. You just realize that you can say a lot in less space when you're forced to. And the only, it's one of the few places we're forced to. I mean, you could say Twitter too, but there it's like, if that's effective too. But I think LinkedIn, that 200 word count is really a great amount, because you can say something really meaningful within 200 words, but it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Exactly. And you've really got to become an effective editor of your own writing, which is also another skill.
So you started posting daily in October, right? Mm-hmm. This last October. And
that's right.
I think a lot of people would find that very intimidating because that is quite, for people who are on LinkedIn and trying to use LinkedIn the right way and create their own content. I think writing daily is one of those things that would intimidate people. What kind of advice do you give around that? Because that is quite a plunge you took.
Yeah. Well, first off, I would say, as maybe a motivating point, it's been very beneficial. As I mentioned, I think it has a benefit for all of the communication you do. And also, it's had a significant benefit in terms of marketing and business development for our business. There's been nothing, and it's not even close, nothing that's been more rewarding in terms of new business opportunities than the when I started posting on LinkedIn. It's been far and away the best marketing we've ever done, or the most beneficial marketing we've ever done. But as far as how to dive into something like that, the way I would say, you oftentimes see these things where people will pose, these 30-day challenges, something like that. But that sort of thing where you do challenge yourself and commit to a 30-day period of time, because that sounds a little less intimidating
Yeah, it
than
does.
posting every day,
Forever.
for eternity.
Right.
If you've just got to commit to 30 days, well, I mean, that might not sound easy, but probably feels a little less intimidating. And what you'll find, I find that there's some magic to that 30-day number, because I've seen, clients kind of go through this transformation where it's a really hard slog at first. But then when they get to the 30-day mark, it becomes far, far easier. And so there's a few reasons for that. One would be, they've developed a better productivity system around it. I mean, one of the tactics I use to be able to write, post every day is I don't write posts every day. I batch write posts when in shorter, a little bit longer periods of time. So, I'll try to set aside maybe 60 to 90 minutes early on a Saturday morning and just knock out, 3 or 4 posts. So I've got a big head start. You get into a flow state and you can really get some writing cranked out. The other big thing is, there is not, again, it's not really writer's block that's the problem. It's idea block, coming up with ideas for posts. And so, the ability to start implementing a system where you're paying attention to and getting your subconscious working on the problem of finding good ideas to post about is the thing that unlocks your ability to post every day. Because once you start paying attention, even if subconsciously, you'll see ideas for posts everywhere. Every conversation you have, everything you read, every podcast you listen to,
Every experience you have out there in the world.
yeah, exactly. Everything is like, oh, I could post about that. I could post about that. And then you just sort of analogize that to the audience that you are, I'll write about Pablo Picasso or Michelangelo, or I have a post I'm writing about Ernest Shackleton, who was the subject of a book about a shipwreck that I just finished reading. And I'll make it all relevant to the legal industry. But it's just, again, it's another form of storytelling where there are no new ideas. It's just, a unique spin on old ideas. And that's really what helps, I think, people post more frequently, is that they get to the point where they're seeing those ideas everywhere. And soon you have more ideas than you could ever write posts about, because, again, you record and having a means to capture those ideas, a note app on your phone or whatever, where you're dumping ideas into. So all those things help, I think, in taking on something like this, where you're trying to, get content out there every day and be visible.
Yeah. And I think, to jump off what you said, I think part of it that people find intimidating is coming up with the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they haven't thought about one of the things you said, which is you got to use what's around you and you got to use your own life. So if if people are uncomfortable, and a lot of times because they don't know they can, it's that they haven't given themselves permission to be a business person, but also be the person they are. So you talk about your life, you talk about things going on that have gone on in the past or are going on now. So it's topical and you're using it to relate to, current events and things you want to say. So I think that really helps people, because the ideas are all around you, and it's a practice of observing and being vulnerable and sharing your authentic self instead of being a business robot.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so there's a line to draw. I mean, I think authenticity and vulnerability. I think Seth Godin talks about this notion where, you know, you don't want to be authentic to the point where,
You're
you're
doing
sort
your
of
therapy
exposing
session. Yeah.
all of your warts to the world. Exactly. People want to hire, they want your best self to show up when they
Sure.
hire you to
Yeah.
do your work, that doesn't mean that you can't be a human being and not always try to project like that, that you're the greatest in the world at everything, and I don't know that. So there's that line you have to draw, but I think being observant on social media, of people who do this well, you start to understand what that line is.
It's got to be something relevant that fits, that you can use as an analogy. And I know I'm a fan of Gary Vee, and one of the things that he was talking to some real estate people. And one of the things he said is, they were wondering, what do I write about? And so he asked them what they were interested in. And one guy said, I'm a huge movie buff. And, it's what I love it when I'm not here at work. He's like, well, then talk about it.
Yeah.
So then you're the real estate agent who's a movie expert.
Yep.
Use it.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah,
So
totally.
so that's a lot different than using yourself authentically and using the things you care and are interested in. You might be super into a sport, like crazy into, a certain football team or basketball team or a certain type of sport. You can use that. You just use it appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a friend of mine. I call him a friend, although we've never actually met in person, but, a connection on LinkedIn who I interact with a lot. His name is, Steve Shanker, and is, he doesn't post. He's a lawyer, but he doesn't post anything about legal issues. He's a New York City history buff, and every day he posts some historical photo about New York, and he tells a story behind the photo. And I don't know if it was yesterday, he posted a photo of Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle, and he's a big Yankees fan. And so, to your point, and he's got a big following, and I know he's got a excellent legal practice, and I know LinkedIn's an important part of that. But he's never posting about the latest statutory changes or Court of Appeals case. It's just not part of what he does.
Yeah. And it really works for some people. And I think you do that in a way. And I think all the people that I really enjoy reading or listening to on LinkedIn do that in a way where they're just, they're open to using their experience, what they are passionate about, and relating it to the challenges that they help solve in business. I want to make sure I ask you about something you do, and then I'll do a couple of real quick questions to get you out of here on time. But can you tell me a little bit about the Thought Leadership Collaborative?
Oh, sure.
Because I think that's so cool.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we do, I do a lot of like one-on-one coaching with clients. I do training work for law firms specifically on things like, how to use LinkedIn effectively. But, there's a limit to what you can do in those domains or in those structures. And so what the Thought Leader Collaborative is I guess people will probably be most familiar with the term like membership site, right? Where it's an online community where we're going to be doing training. It's going to be a lot of community collaboration. We're going to be bringing on experts from outside of our organization. We're going to have online resources for people, and so it's a platform where people can learn how to use LinkedIn effectively to become a thought leader, build their brand, grow their network, and ultimately grow their practice. So our audience or our membership, we're targeting it towards those in professional services, and so it's going to be launching in August. We're going to be having our first kind of window open for registration the last week in July, and then we'll open that up like every 4 months to new members. But yeah, it's an opportunity to kind of teach what we do at scale, at a greater scale, for more people at a much lower price point. So yeah, we're excited about that. It's a kind of a new way to deliver, the consulting services we do to hopefully a bigger audience.
Yeah, and also maybe an audience that can't do the custom one-on-one services, but they still need the help. I think it's great. I looked at it and looked at what you're offering, and honestly, I think it would help a lot of people. And since I consume a lot of your content, I think I'm almost reading everything you put out at this point. I think people would get a lot out of it. So, we'll certainly talk it up when it comes out because I think there's a lot of value there. you do content very, very well.
Yeah, we're excited about it. I mean, 'cause, in part because it's a way, like right now, I could never, at least in a paid engagement, I would never be working with like a law student, or even, I have so many connections on LinkedIn internationally, right? In markets where, the idea of spending $400 for an hour of coaching services just isn't feasible. But we're going to be able to, do this for just a tiny fraction of that. And for like law students in particular, we're going to open it up for like $10 a month. And so now we'll have a whole new avenue to, I guess, be helpful, right? That's the idea, at least. I mean, it's obviously not a charity, but it's a way to do business and with more people at a price point that we haven't been able to do before. And I guess that's the benefit and the beauty of technology and scale.
Yeah, and also you get to help people that you would never have as client. I mean, law students aren't going to be able to sign up for your services, and it's a way for people that are curious to dip their toe in and start to learn for real. I think those kind of programs are great, so good for you for doing it.
Thank you.
So I always like to ask people, this has been a really difficult year for everyone, I think, a very strange, challenging year. What was the highlight of this past year for you? I know it's hard, isn't it?
No, but I think I have an answer to that. I mean, if I look back like at last summer and even this winter, the ability to just have a more balanced and less busy sort of social schedule, like outside of work. My kids had less going on. We had less going on. And as a result of that, we got to spend more time doing a lot of the things that we really enjoy doing. And so I'd say that, and that's mostly, and luckily most of those things we like to do are done outdoors.
Right.
So I looked back fondly, last summer, where we just had more time to spend outside doing the types of activities that we really were the reason we moved up here in the first place. So that was probably one of the highlights.
Good for you. Yeah, I think there's silver linings in all the craziness of last year, and so I like to ask that question.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
Final question to get you out of here on time. What would the Jay Harrington today, the experienced Jay Harrington, tell the younger version of yourself?
All right. Try to keep that brief.
Yeah. Well, you got to go, so you got to keep.
Yeah.
Brief.
No. Yeah. I would just say, like, slow down and be a bit more patient. I was really. I think I look back and think, my especially the latter half of my 20s, where I was just working like crazy, ultra ambitious, was a time that, I certainly grew professionally and whatnot, but I missed out on a bit. My wife and I, we got married when I was 25, and she was 25, just finished law school, so right before I started working. I wish I had taken some of those years, before we had started a family and had kids and done more traveling, just kind of relaxed a little bit more, didn't get so worked up about everything. So yeah, I would say that my advice to my former self was just like, chill out a little bit, because everything's going to be okay. And the things that you think that you'll want 20 years from now don't actually turn out to be the things that you want now.
That's great. That's great advice for any younger person watching this and anybody getting started in their career. And also the things that you think are a huge, big deal, often in hindsight weren't as big of a deal as you thought.
Totally.
So, hey, thank you so much for doing this today, man. I really appreciate it.
No, it was great, Steve. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me on.